Good morning folks, welcome to Visordown, welcome to Monte Blanco circuit here in southern Spain, and welcome to the launch of this, the Suzuki GSX-8R. Suzuki's new bikes at the minute are a bit like buses. You wait 15 years for one to come along and then 3 arrive all at once. They are similar in some ways and very different in others. So this is the latest, this is the GSX-8R, which is closely related to the GSX-8S and also the Visordown 800 DE and RE models. So we're here at the circuit of Monte Blanco in Spain, and we've got a one-day press riding launch ahead of us. So we've got morning on track. It's a little bit chilly. We've got some upgraded tyres on the bikes we're riding on track. So these have got the Sport Smart TT hoops, which don't come as standard, so they should provide us with a bit more grip. So I'm going to do a bit of an intro to the bike here. So this of course is going into the new sort of parallel twin cylinder middleweight supersports segment. It'll be fighting it out with bikes like the RS660, Triumph's new Daytona 660 and the high-tech Aprilia RS660 as well. It is £8,899. We have got of course a 776cc parallel twin cylinder cross-plane crank engine to give you that V-twin sort of delivery, and it is making very similar power as the other Suzukis in the range. So we've got around about 80 odd horsepower. So the suspension, the chassis, the frame, the subframe, the swing arm, the brakes, it is all the same as the GSX-8S. But they have tuned the suspension to give a sportier ride. We've obviously got these top yoke mounted clip-on handlebars on there. We've obviously got this new full fairing, but they are promising us that it's a very different machine to ride on the road and on the track. So we're here to test it out. We've got our sighting laps coming up in about 5 minutes time. Just got a little briefing that we're going to get out of the way. And then I will check back with you in a little bit once we've had the full road and track experience to tell you exactly what it's like to ride. Cheers folks. Okay folks, there we have it. That is our riding day done on the new GSX-8R, or as I'm going to call it, just the 8R, because Suzuki make tongue twisters of bike names, and quite frankly I haven't got the energy to deal with that right now. It has been a fab day. It's always a fab day when you come to Spain on a bike launch, when you've got great weather like we've had today, you've got fantastic roads, some of the best roads I've ever ridden, and you've got the Monte Blanco circuit thrown into the mix, and a cracking little middleweight super sport bike. It's a day to remember. And it properly has been. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the bike now. So this is of course Suzuki's new sports bike. So it's the £8,899 I think it is bike. It's £700 more than the naked versions, and for that you're getting the upgraded suspension with slightly stiffer forks, a little bit less travel, you're getting the fairings, you're getting a reworked rear shock absorber, and that is basically it. So really on the face of it, you could look at that and you could listen to what I'm saying and you could read the specs on a spec sheet and you could say that there isn't really very much that separates the two bikes other than the bits of plastic that have been bolted onto the front end of them. But having ridden the GSX-8, I'm just going to call it the 8S, I'm so sorry, the 8S on the road, and having ridden this on road and track today, there is actually quite a big difference. And that is something that made me quite happy, because there are some these sports bikes that were previously nakeds out in the marketplace, and when you ride the sports bike version, it just feels like the naked with a fairing bolted on. But that's not the case with this. So I'm going to talk about, really for me, the biggest difference between the two is the suspension. So you've got stiffer springs, you've got completely reworked internals for the fork, so it is tuned for the 8R, tuned for a sports bike. What that means is you've got a more solid, firmer front end, you've got better stability on the brakes, you've got more feel, and it is just all around a much more focused package without being as focused as some of the inline 4-cylinder super sport bikes that we've got on the market at the moment and we've previously had on the market. We did the track sessions here at Monte Blanco, which is a very nicely laid out circuit. There's a lot of fast corners, there's a lot of slow corners, there's a little bit of rise and fall, and there's this 1 kilometre, I think it is, nearly straight here, which did feel a little bit slow. We were topping out about 135, 138 miles an hour by the end of the straight. But really, it's shown, the 8R, it's shown all the best attributes of it. It changes direction very, very well. For a bike that is effectively it's got quite a long wheelbase. I mean, it's a little bit longer than the 8S, but it changes direction really, really nicely. Another feature of the bike, which is one thing that I didn't notice when I was riding the Naked 8S, the brakes on this thing. They're Nissin 4-pot calipers. They're premium Nissin 4-pot calipers for this kind of bike. They're not Brembos, they're nothing fancy like that. You've only got a 2-channel ABS system and you've only got a span adjustable lever. So it's not what you'd call budget, but it's not what you'd call premium either. But I have never encountered brakes that are as good as these on anything in this particular price point. They are absolutely phenomenal. And one of the biggest pluses that I can say for it was we did 3 sessions on track earlier on today, as well as a warm-up session where we did a few laps just to get a feel for the bike and a feel for the track and warm everything up. And then we also did some tracking sessions as well. I have not felt brake fade at all once on this. The span adjustable lever, I set that out fairly far just so that it wouldn't start coming back to the handlebar if I did get any, but I did not get any brake fade whatsoever. And this is, you know, it's a heavy braking track. You've got this kilometre straight, there's a hairpin down there behind me that you might be able to see off in the distance. So there are some really heavy braking zones where you're braking from well over 100 miles an hour down to about 30 or 40 miles an hour to get yourself into the corner. And I've been on so many track days in that sort of situation where by the end of one session, you've got brake fade. By the end of the day, you're pulling the lever back to the bar to try and get the thing stopped. Absolutely none of that. It was very impressive. That's one of the most impressive braking systems I've seen on any bike in this segment. Absolutely brilliant. So there we have it, folks. Monte Blanco circuit has been an absolute joy this morning. We've basically what we've done so far is we had a couple of sighting laps just to get the tyres and the bike warmed up and the brakes warmed up and so you know which way it was going. And then we had pretty hefty sessions, to be fair. We had 3 20 to 25 minute sessions and they were really small groups as well. There were only 6 people out on the track at a time. They were staggering us, so we were starting at 30-second or 20-second intervals. So really, it was a bit like you had the track to yourself, because unless you came up across a slower rider or one of Suzuki's endurance racers came past you, crossed up sideways going into a corner, you really didn't know there was anyone else there. It's like the perfect bloody track day. So the bike's been brilliant. I've already probably told you all about that. You've already seen the track review of it, but I just wanted to let you know what we've got coming up. So we have got the road ride. So we've got around about 140 kilometers of kind of the ideal hunting ground for a bike like the little Suzuki GSX-8R. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've just had lunch. I'm going to get myself kitted up, and then once I've finished and we've ridden the road ride, I'll be back for a full review of what it is like to ride on the road, including the full verdict and how it stacks up against the competition. Cheers, folks. So after we'd done the track riding this morning, we went out on the road and it was the perfect playground for the 8R. It was just literally sinuous curves. We didn't go very high up into the mountains. It was quite nice and flat. You got great visibility, great tarmac, and all the roads had a nice amount of camber leading into them. The only real thing that you notice when you're riding it on the road that is something that I would like to change is, well, actually 2 things. The tyres, which I would ditch because Dunlop Road Smart 2s I don't think are the best. I would also want to pull the foot pegs back a bit, get some different rear sets and move them up a little bit, because the other thing that you encounter is that ground clearance is an issue and you're always scraping the pegs. You don't have to push the bike very far to scrape the pegs, and I have to go quite a bit further than the peg to actually get my knee down when we were riding on the track. Not a huge issue if you don't ride on the track, but if you are going to be thinking about doing that, it is something you should look to do. When we rode on the track earlier on, just going to talk back about the tyres for a moment, we didn't go out on these Road Smart 2s. We went out on Sport Smart TTs, which are a sportier, softer compound rubber, basically designed for track day riding, occasional track days, and a lot of fast road work. They were night and day better than the Road Smarts that are fitted as standard. These are the tyres that you get from the dealer, and the Sport Smart TTs were much, much better. The only time that I ever felt any slips or slides from the front end or the back end was very early on in the day when the sun was super, super low, the temperature was low, the track was freezing cold, and so were the tyres. And those first couple of laps you were coming out of corners and you could feel the bike starting to slide about, and you got a bit of movement on the brakes as well. Once the sun was up and the track was warm and the bikes were all nicely warmed up, we didn't get any of that. But what my feeling on that is that if you were going to go out and you were going to buy one of these, and I'm going to tell you to go out and get the Sport Smart TTs to improve the handling of the bike, why would you stop there? What I would advise for anybody getting one of these is to go out and get some Pirelli Rosso Corsa 4s, which for me are the best all-round tyre for a bike of this size, this weight and this power output, because you've got great dry grip, you've got excellent wet grip, they heat up quick, they stay hot for ages, and you've got really good longevity with them as well. That would be Toad's top tip for this one. So the real question about this, and this is going to form my verdict of the bike really, is how does this shape up in that new breed of middleweight bikes, all those other parallel cross-plane twins, and also the triple that we've got from Triumph, the Daytona, which we've not ridden yet, but we are in a couple of weeks' time. It's a very nice package. I mean, it's not as electronically advanced as something like the Aprilia RS660. It's not as racy as the Yamaha R7. It's probably its closest competitor in that little segment is probably going to be the Triumph Daytona 660, because the Daytona kind of splits the R7 and the Kawasaki Ninja 650, and it's kind of a middle ground in between them. And that's where I see this bike, because the comfort of it is very good. It's very easy to ride when you're on the road. You can ride quick, you can ride slow, you can, you know, use the torque. Once you get to the track, you can hang off it, you can get your knee down. It can do all of those things, but because this isn't a super focused inline 4-cylinder Supersport 600 like an R6 or a CBR 600RR or a Kawasaki 636 Ninja, it's forgiving. And what these bikes do that those other bikes do, the old school inline 4-cylinder Supersport 600s, they don't flatter you. You've got to be a good rider, you've got to be on top of your game, and you've got to nail everything to get a good lap out of them. Parallel twins and torquier stuff like the Triumph, which is incoming, you really don't. They flatter you as a rider, really, no matter what your level. And if you wanted to get started in track day riding, these are the bikes that you really should be aiming at, because they're cheaper to insure, they're cheaper to maintain, they're cheaper to service, they're easier to ride, and even though the speed is lower, you still get the same amount of enjoyment out of them, because if, like me, you don't go chasing lap times, there is a hell of a lot of fun to be had out of this little thing here. So there we have it. That is the Suzuki GSX-8R. I have been Toad Hancocks for Visordown. Thank you very much for watching. And if you've got this far and you've enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of Visordown's latest videos. And for all the latest news, reviews and motorcycle features, please get yourself over to visordown.com.